Fantasy and Some Flights, exploring the realms of beer, board games, books, and bourbon.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy and Some Flights podcast. I'm Nelson.
I'm Dalton.
And tonight we are talking about a book that just recently got a movie adaptation, Dune. Dune.
I have not seen it yet. You haven't seen it yet either, right?
I haven't seen it either.
I think it's like
so
tonight.
It did come out
right?
today.
Yeah.
Is it tonight? It doesn't matter. This is going to be released like a week from now.
Yeah, true.
So
but we used to argue about it.
Matter?
It's like Thursday, right? Yeah. You know how like sometimes they release it on like a Thursday before like the Friday or whatever.
Yeah.
You can get like a late night viewing or something.
I saw a post on Reddit of someone who had seen it, and they said that they loved it.
Sweet.
And like right now on IMDb, it's sitting at like an 8.2 out of 10. And so, I mean, it looks really good. They got an all-star cast for it.
Such a crazy
cast. So I'm really excited.
I love that it's not even necessarily like amazing names. We like look down the cast, and you're like, yeah. You know, just like all of them are really well casted.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hoping to see it this weekend.
Sweet.
So I'm hoping that I will be able to see it before this episode gets released. Yeah. So I'm going to just spend this episode talking like I have already seen it. And then we'll just go see how it goes.
I'll just ask you questions and you'll just bullshit your way through it. Nobody will know. Nobody else has seen it yet either, presumably.
Yeah, and then Paul falls in love with Zendaya.
Yeah. Which Spider-Man did not like.
Spider-Man hated that.
Nor did Zac Efron.
Oh, yeah, man. Oof.
Dude has worms, though. Like, how can you compete?
Yeah. He rode the worm.
He rode the worm.
It's pretty dope.
Pretty dope.
Alrighty.
Oh, we should record this episode.
Oh, yeah, we actually should. And before we actually start talking about Dune, we should probably talk about what we're drinking. Yes. So, Dalton, what is on your flight tonight?
Nice. My flight, I think, based on the face that you have made when I saw you drink your beer, I think we both don't have great flight tonight. But we'll...
What? No.
We'll see when we get to yours. But just off the bat, I would give mine a 2 cheers. So I am drinking...
Cheers.
Right. Clink, clink. I am drinking Smoke Wagon bourbon, which sounds really cool. It's a straight bourbon whiskey. It's a Las Vegas distillery. The way I would sum this up is when I'm paying attention to the way it tastes, I don't like it. And when I'm not, it's fine.
Okay.
So I have actually empty. This is actually my last drink of the bottle. It's empty now, and I have been using it as like my third drink. Whiskey.
Very coherent.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a rough day.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm just impressed.
It's my first drink of the night, but it's my last pour of the bottle.
Oh,
yeah, and I've been using it as like my third drink whiskey. So like when I've had something I like, and then I've had the second thing of that thing that I like, and I want something else, like I drink this one because at that point it's like fine. Just to describe it a little bit, it has sort of like a apple pie. Like a crisp type of like nose, which is actually like kind of nice. I think actually the nose might be the best part of it. Right. After that, I personally just think it's fine. It has again some of that like apple pie crust kind of flavors like pulling through, but I really don't like the finish. I think it's kind of like rubbery and like a little bitter, and it just doesn't like sit very well. And I'm finding like more and more as I develop that I think the finish is actually for me more important than the taste, than like the body of a whiskey. Because like a good whiskey, especially like a bourbon that has these really strong oak and smoke flavors, like should sit on your palate for a while. And so like the taste of it, because of like high alcohol content and stuff, right? You might just kind of get burned away from the taste, and as you like taste through it, you might, depending on your palate, you may enjoy the taste, and I typically do, and a lot of people would. But it's like it's going to just kind of be like warm and okay, and then the finish is really where it should shine, that like feeling of it like sitting with you and warming you up, and that's what's going to feel really nice. So the fact that this one is just like it's downhill from the nose, right? It's like nose is like kind of nice, body is like fine, and finish is like bad, and so that's why I ended up not liking it. I am a little bit curious to try. This was like a specialty that they released for like 4th of July, so I've actually had the bottle for a while, and just haven't like gotten around to it. It is a straight bourbon whiskey, but it's not their like typical small batch. Like their small batch is a little bit different. I've at least seen that it has a different alcohol percentage. So I haven't tried it, but like theoretically it's a different blending, you know?
Gotcha. Okay.
So it may be better. You know, I've seen like just quick reviews online. Looks like people like it. So I may give it a try if I see it at some point, because I think it could be good, but like just this exact expression was like not good for me.
Well, that's too bad. But I guess it is kind of nice to have something that is around that, you know, third drink of the night where you don't want to necessarily drink all your good stuff. What's the price point on it?
Yeah, I think it was like 40.
Yeah, that's a little bit too much.
Yeah, just a little high.
For something like that,
Yeah.
Especially when you can just grab an Elijah Craig for $10 cheaper or whatever.
Right,
So.
right. Or a Jameson like we talked about last time.
Oh,
you know, where it's like, there's better things for a third drink whiskey, you know?
Right. That's too bad.
Yeah.
But hopefully the
some, you
episode
lose
is
some.
better than the whiskey. So.
That's right. Yeah. And as opposed to the whiskey, we're going to go up from here, right?
Well, before we go up, let's stagnate a little bit and talk about my flight.
Yeah.
So today I stopped by the liquor store on the way home to get a beer for tonight because I am not doing my diet, and so I didn't actually have any beer. So I'm just like, oh yeah, let's do a beer for the episode tonight. So I grabbed Gnawbone by Oak and Barrel Brewing Company, which is located out of Greenwood, Indiana, which is like 40 minutes from here.
Mm-hmm.
I literally bought it off it's a pale ale, so I enjoy pale ales,
Nice.
and I literally bought it off of like the logo because it just looked really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to show it to you because you can actually see it, but I just thought it was funny.
Oh,
it
is.
It's like a weird, like skull and crossbone, like crazy. Like,
it looks very like Courage the Cowardly Dog sort of like style.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a great way to say it. And then like when I was checking out, I guess the cashier may have just been a really good salesperson. She was like, wow, this one sells really good. Like, you know, like talking it up. And she's like, it's local. We always like to support the local businesses. We can never keep it in stock. And I am not sure why. Like it's a 2 cheers for me. I mean, it's mediocre. It's almost the same thing that you were talking about with your whiskey, where the nose is really good, the first part of the taste, but I just really dislike the aftertaste.
Oh, yeah.
Like I have had some already tonight. Okay, that sounded like really like weird and like I had been drinking all day. I've had like a beer tonight and like I feel dehydrated. Like that's how like my throat is like dry.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It's just weird. So it's not been my favorite. 2 cheers. I'm like, you know, I would drink it again if someone gave it to me, but like over like, I don't know, Bud Light or something. But
right, especially like in the pale ales, right? Like there's a million of them. You can find good
there's a
pale
million
ales.
of them. One of the interesting things about this one is that it's actually pretty dark for a pale ale. So I am estimating the SRM around 13, and usually I think of pale ales at like 6 to 8. Yeah. And so it definitely looks more like on the IPA or like maybe even a double. It's just like a dark.
It's like almost
color.
Amber. Like when you pulled it out, I was like, "Are you drinking an amber tonight?" Or like a like an Oktoberfest or like a fall ale of some kind.
Yeah, and I think it's correlated, but it's very much maltier than it is bitter.
Okay.
Like I typically think of maltier beers as being a little bit darker, and I think they just kind of overdid it on the malt on this one. So, 2 cheers. It is a 6.9%, which is pretty nice.
At least you're getting bang for your buck, right?
Oh, hey. Love the pun. But anyways, let's talk about some more interesting stuff.
Yeah.
What's been on your mind? What have you been reading or watching recently?
Yeah. Let's see. So in one of our recent episodes, I talked about a book called The Assassin's Apprentice, which we kind of ran out of time to talk about, and so I was saving it for this episode. Because everything else that I've been reading have been, like I'm reading a book, finally getting around to book 4 of Stormlight Archives. So I am reading a physical copy of Rhythm of War. I also get my tricep workout in while I read it, which is really nice.
Yep.
I go to bed every night and my arms are tired.
So my wife is traveling right now, and she sent me, or she was asking me like, hey, what audiobook should I listen to? And so I told her Way of Kings. Like, you need to listen to Way of Kings. And then I just got a text like the day that she was leaving. She goes, Way of Kings is so long. But yeah, it is. But okay. So without like spoiling anything, how far are you into Rhythm of War?
I'm like 110
percentage.
Yeah, I think so. I'm like 110 pages. So I'm like, I think
3%.
Like, yeah, I think something like that. I think realistically, I think I'm like that's like 8 or 9% into the book.
Okay,
it's
cool.
not 10.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So it just takes a long time to read. The pages are big too, and the text is tiny. It's like, dear God, it just takes forever. I read like 5 pages in a night.
And he wrote it in like 8 months.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that. Insane amount of content.
Yeah,
but anyways,
he's got some motivation I wish I could borrow. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. But anyways, we've covered Rhythm of War, so I didn't want to talk about it too much in terms of content, except for just saying that I am reading it, finally. I'm continuing on audiobook. I'm continuing the Witcher series, which, again, we've talked about a lot, but I'm on, I think, book 6 now. It might be book 5, because, again, if you remember that, like, the numbering for that series is super weird, and it's hard to remember what book number I'm on.
Yeah,
I think I might be on book 5, actually, now that I think I'm on this one, and then I have 2 more.
Cool. Okay.
So still really good, still maintaining, high quality. They're a little bit shorter than the Stormlight Archives. They're more on like the 16-hour range.
It's still a good book though.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
that's a lot of content.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for like a series that has 5 or 6 books.
Yeah, definitely. And Netflix season 2 is coming out this winter, so that's exciting.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was so soon.
Yeah. They got nothing else to do.
That's fair.
So, but anyways, Assassin's Apprentice. So I thought this was an interesting book to talk about because I have picked up this book once and I didn't finish it. And that's pretty rare for me. I generally finish books. It's like kind of a point of pride thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to finish it. So I went back to it like a year later and I picked it up and I just didn't like it. Like first half of the book, I was like just dragging myself through it and I just didn't like it. And there's a couple reasons why, but then like about 60 to 70% of the way through the book, I was like, well, this is kind of getting a little interesting. And like 75% of the way through the book, I was like hooked, and it was really good. And
it was a slow burn.
It's
like Dune.
It is a little bit like Dune in that way. Except for Dune is like 30%, and this one's like 70% to like get started. And that was the thing that sucked about it, is like it was started. Like it wasn't in like an exposition. It wasn't just being slow. It was just like not kind of going anywhere. And she had this interesting idea for the main character where she didn't like name him.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and so he was like a young boy who's like abandoned by his parents or whatever. He's an orphan. So he just like, and he also had like, he has like some amnesia about like his like childhood. So he actually just doesn't remember his name. And so like the dude who like is kind of taking care of him just like calls him boy. And so like he will like introduce himself to people like that way. They'll be like, what's your name? And he's like, I don't have a name. Or he'll be like, boy. Yeah. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he's like, I don't understand why people get so mad. And it's like, okay, it's an interesting concept, but in reality, what ends up happening is it's like, no characters are connecting with him. And then like, I have trouble connecting with him because it's like, I don't even really have a name for this guy,
Right.
And he's like a little bratty, and it's also like a little unrealistic. It's like, and because he was always like, why do people keep asking me this? And it's like, well, because everyone else has a name. Have you not noticed that by now? Like that seems a little unbelievable.
Almost everyone you've also interacted with has a name.
Right. So like around the time that the book starts getting good, people start calling him Fitz, Fitz. Okay. And I thought that was actually an interesting, so like the way that came about is like, like the last name, like Fitzpatrick or like Fitzgerald or whatever.
Yeah.
And so apparently that's like I don't know if it's a Welsh word. I don't know, a Gaelic or Welsh or something, like some language. And that means like son of. And so it would be like Fitzgerald would be like son of Gerald, or like Fitzpatrick, son of Patrick, right? And so they call him Fitz because he doesn't have a dad. And so he's just, he's just Fitz nothing.
Son of nothing.
Right. And so like a lot of times people will be like, like they'll hear someone call him that and they're like, oh, he's such an asshole. And he's like, I don't know, that's just what people call me,
Yeah.
But anyways, it has actually a little bit like Dune, it has a really slow burn in like setting up politics and intrigue. And for a while, you actually don't really recognize that that's what she is trying to do. That she's trying to like create this backstory, because what ends up happening is that he, like, fairly early on that he's going to get trained as like an assassin. First of all, it's called Assassin's Apprentice, and it like says it on the back of the book. But what you don't know is like as that starts happening, he is like a political tool. Like he's not just like an assassin for money. Like he's an assassin as like as a functioning part of the court, basically. So she gives you all of this political background because like when he starts assassinating people, it has to be relevant and matter. Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
And like when he is sent on a mission, what ends up happening is he gets like a bit of autonomy in that, where like he is trusted to kind of like make a judgment call of like whether or not he should kill people. Right. And that's where the book starts getting interesting, where it's like, oh, like now he has this not only like moral, but also like he has to think through the political implications of like, what if I kill this guy? Like, how does that help the people that I am like entitled to, or like have been trained and promised to help? I'm sworn to help, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
But it has kind of a bad, like fuzzy soft magic system that like he actually ends up going to like school for, but then it's like, you can't really go to school for soft magic. We've talked about that. So like, it just doesn't really work. And there is a bit of like gimmicky solving of issues in front of the character with the magic system that was a little bit disappointing. But I don't know. That's why I'm like, I might read the rest of the trilogy. It's because like by the end, it's like, I like this where he's like an assassin. He's part of the court and he has to kind of make the decision. It's kind of on his shoulders a little bit. Like, I think that's a cool concept. You know, it just took forever to get there. So
now it's interesting.
Right now it's interesting.
You put in the work. You might as well.
Right. So anyways, if that sounds interesting to you, you know, you might try picking it up. I don't think that I would like, if somebody was reading it, I don't think I would discourage them from it. It's like, yeah, I liked it by the end, you know. It's just, you kind of got to speed read for like half the book and just get through it.
Gotcha. What's the length on it? Like, if you're going to commit to it, is it like a big commitment?
No, I think I'm trying to like relate it to something we've read. I feel like it's probably like Mistborn length. I read a physical book, and so that's why I'm not able to give you hours like we normally do.
Yeah, so I think Mistborn is like 25 hours?
Oh, that might be a little longer than I thought then.
Okay. Like Lord of the Rings is like 16?
Yeah.
Ish?
It's probably about that then. It's probably about like about a Lord of the Rings. I'm just trying to like think how big the book is physically, and it's like I could see Fellowship of the Ring being about a similar size, you know?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's not a small book.
Right. Yeah, it's not short, but it's probably, you know, somewhere in the medium length.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people are running out of things to read.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if you're getting down to your B tier list, this may be one of your options.
Yeah, this might be an option just to see if you like it.
There just aren't enough books out there is all I'm saying.
Yeah, there aren't enough good books, that's for sure. But anyways, that's been the main thing on my mind. It's actually a little bit dated, but it was something I've been looking forward to talking about on a book episode. So I've held on to it just to discuss it with you. What's been on your mind?
I've been reading Dune, right? But outside of that, I've been rereading The Hunger Games, or re-listening to The Hunger Games.
That's an interesting pick.
Yeah, and so like we fell into the trap on, you know, hey, we want to watch a movie, and then Hulu is promoting it, and so we watched the first movie and the second movie and then the third movie. We still haven't watched the fourth movie, but I was like, I remember those being good books, and I did not have them on Audible, so I had never listened to them. So it was back like before I started listening to books when I was reading them. So like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Or when, right? Like I remember waiting for the third book to come out. And so I just hadn't read them in a little while, and I was like, okay, let's reread these and let's see how I like them now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good story. But it's very much a young adult novel.
Yeah.
So there's that. I guess in that sense, it's like a relaxing novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. I mean, like your children are killing each other, so like not relaxing in that sense, but like relaxing in the sense of like it's an easy read, it's an easy listen to something. I can kind of zone out and I know what's going on.
Yeah,
and so that's been nice. And I guess like, you know, like Katniss has some character development, but like really I don't feel. I'm probably about halfway through Catching Fire, the second book.
Mm-hmm.
One of the complaints that I've found is that like I don't necessarily think that a lot of other characters have a lot of growth.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that comes in with Mockingjay, like in the third book.
Yeah. It's like, right, we have to do character development.
And so that's been something interesting. The other thing that I kind of thought was funny, which my wife pointed out when we were watching the movie and that I never remembered, is that Katniss, the main character, is like super she always thinks that people are out to get her. And so
paranoid.
Like reading it from, she's super paranoid. That's the word. And so like reading it from that perspective has been really funny because like, you know, you have Peeta, which is like one of the love interests, and he's, you know, just trying to protect Katniss, and Katniss is like, why is he doing this?
Right.
And it's like,
that bastard's up to something.
Is he going to kill me as soon as I turn around? And so like looking at it from that eye, or like from that lens, it's just kind of interesting. The books I think are still good. Like they're not going to be my favorite books of all time, but you know, it's been nice and kind of relaxing. Yeah. I am glad because I kind of had the sour taste in my mouth after The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was the prequel.
Right.
And so I didn't like that book.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about that on probably an episode.
Yes. A long time ago, but yes.
Insert episode number here.
Yeah.
We'll fix it in post. But
just be like in episode number 32.
Exactly. I'm not going to go and figure out the work to go back and find it.
Yeah.
So I did kind of have a bad taste in my mouth, and I think that the other books are kind of written in the same style. Like they're not the greatest writing style that I've ever seen, but I like the story way more than I like the prequel. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been reading. I've been reading The Hunger Games. I'm just going to continue on just because I'm like in Catching Fire, and I'm not going to spoil anything for. It's not one of the core that we spoiled. However, I think it's probably one that people probably know the story of. Like I'm about halfway through the Hunger Games portion of Catching Fire. So like when the contestants are in the arena, and so I just love the arena in Catching Fire. Like they do a special build of arenas for every Hunger Games, and in Catching Fire, I just think the arena is awesome. So I'm just really enjoying that. Yeah,
I think you have a good point about like character development. It's a little like Revenge of the Sith, where it's like the third book, like, oh crap, we have to develop the characters, and like it all gets like shoved in, you know?
Yeah.
And I think love triangles are cheap drama.
I knew you were going to bring it up. I knew you were.
I hate them. I hate them so much. So
yeah. Yeah. No, and that's fair.
Yeah. But you're right. Like they aren't meant for us, right? They're meant for 13 to 16, and that type of drama, that type of character, like really catches, you know, the sort of coming of age story that's going on, someone having to strike out on their own, and you know, being torn away from home. Like all of that resonates super well. So I totally understand why it's done. I don't like it, but I love the idea of Hunger Games, and that's why I read Red Rising over and over again.
That's fair. Yeah, it's the grown-up version of Hunger Games.
Exactly.
Yeah. The only other thing that I wanted to mention in this section is I sent you a link, I think it was yesterday, because I stumbled across the fact that there are Pendragon prequels.
Yeah, who knew?
Written 12 years ago.
Right.
Like, right. I have no idea how this never came up. They're not written by DJ McHale either.
It's super weird. I wonder how, like you said, we just found out about this yesterday, so like we've done no research on it. So yeah, I wonder if he's involved. He must be involved in some way.
I think he is involved a little bit.
He's alive, right? Like,
yeah.
He certainly was 12 years ago. Like,
yeah. And yeah, so the prequels just basically follow or like tell a pre-story of all the other travelers from all the other territories. And so I'm going to read them. They don't have an audiobook. Like, they're that small. And so I'm going to actually have to read them. But I don't know. I really like the Pendragon universe, and I really love prequels. So how could this go wrong? Right. What's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst that can happen? It could be bad and crush your hopes. That's basically the worst that can happen.
It's not going to.
It's not going to happen, though. That never happens. Never happens. But no, you're totally right. I'm pretty excited for it, too. It's like, I don't know. I think the only thing that's like I caution myself with is I know as soon as I read those, I'm going to want to reread Pendragon, you know? And it's like...
That's not the worst thing in the world.
But it's like 10 books. It takes like 3 months for me to get... Like, they're not that long, but it still takes like a decent amount of time for me to get through
it. Yeah, I was going to... Like, 10 books, but the first book is like 12 minutes long. Like, it's not... Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure I finished the first 4 in a week. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's
then they start getting longer. They do... They
get substantial.
The last couple are pretty big.
Yeah, but you're right that the first 4 are all pretty short. But we've you know... soft promised McKay that we will start Wheel of Time and talk with him about it. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
We should probably read Wheel of Time.
Probably.
Let's actually set that up as like a book club in our Discord.
Okay. All right, we can do
that. Let's just commit to it.
Okay.
And at that point,
on the cast.
Yeah. And I feel like I won't be able to back out if we commit to it.
Okay. All right. Discord. You're right. We'll do it. So
let's do it.
So starting in, I guess
2023.
No later than. Oh man. Oh. See, then there's a Thanksgiving holiday. We'll find a time. Okay, we're not going to commit to a time right now, but we commit to finding a time that is reasonable to read the first book of Wheel of Time. If you're interested in that, we'll have a book club on the Discord, and we'll try and get
a book analysis episode for it.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll try and get McKay involved in it. He's super busy. Like that dude has stuff going on.
Yeah. Congratulations to him he funded Snack Time today, which is his first board game on Kickstarter, or first like pub. I don't know. I think it is. It's Backfire, his publishing companies. It's their first game.
Yeah, it's Backfire's first game, and it funded. And it funded
today,
super fast, right? Like in 2 days or something.
It went on yesterday and funded today, so awesome. It was less. I think it was less than 24 hours, which is great. Mm-hmm. It's a cool little roll and write.
Yep.
And so it's still on Kickstarter. Yep. As of the release of this episode, it's still on Kickstarter. So please go check it out because it looks super awesome. And it's one of those games that we can play, unlimited players.
Yeah.
So if you back it, we'll play it with you. So
yes,
let's do it.
Absolutely.
Anyways, so I got sidetracked. What are we talking? Oh, Dune.
Yeah. At least we're heading that way. I think we might even be ready for it unless there's other things on your mind. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it. Alrighty. So we tried something a little bit different on our last I call it a book analysis, our last series analysis, the Star Wars prequel, where we kind of walked through and did like a summary and kind of talked about the movies as, you know, kind of a chronological order. Yeah. And so we're going to try the same thing, because
that episode was a ton of fun, by the way. That
episode was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's like one of my personal favorite episodes so far.
It's because it's one of your personal favorite movies.
Yeah, you're right. That maybe it's just because I was like bitching the whole time. Like, that's what made it fun. You know, just being like,
you do like to complain.
I do, man. I do. I do. It's like bitching and like chocolate and whiskey. Like that's how I cope with stress. So
I mean it works.
And volleyball. I hit a ball real hard. That's the other thing.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right.
I'm just Alrighty. So I mean, Dune is kind of structured in 3 books.
Yep.
So let's talk about a summary.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. I do like our 30-second summaries. I think they're funny, but I think we're going to skip it for this one and give this a bit of a try, see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you start out with this kid named Paul, I think.
Which, just off the bat, lamest name in the series. Like, everybody else has a dope name, and he's like, my name's Paul. It's like, come on, man. I mean, it's a bit of an Atreides thing, like, I guess, because it's like Paul and Jessica, but like, I don't know, Leto's kind of a cool name, you know?
They're such like Earth names. Like, just like, hi, I'm Steve.
Like, hey,
John.
we're the white people, you know?
Yeah. I've always considered that, or thought that was kind of strategic, so you would be able to remember the main character.
That's probably a good point.
Right.
He also
easy to remember.
Yeah. And he does a bit of theming with names in that way, like, you know, like that the Harkonnens, like his name's Vladimir. It's like, oh, Russians are bad. Like, right, this was written in like the 60s.
Right, yeah.
You know, so it's like, oh, Vladimir, you know, like we don't like him. He must suck.
Exactly.
You know, and then like Shaney, and like they have very like, it's in the 60s, it's not super racially sensitive, but they have kind of a native sounding name, right? Like they have something that to our brain might sound like, oh, this kind of sounds a little Native American, right? And like that's how you're, I think, supposed to kind of make that connection. And so again, it's like, it's not great nowadays. It's not the greatest, most PC look, but he does try to like at least be consistent within like the factions of like kind of how people's names sound. So anyway, you're right. Our main character's name is Paul, for all that's worth. He gets some cooler names later, but for now it's just lame old Paul.
That is fair. I was writing down like all of his names.
He gets a bunch.
Started feeling like Daenerys, right?
Yeah. Right.
But anyways,
like we start in like year, what is it, like 10,900 AD or something like that? Like,
yeah, it's something crazy.
And we still are naming people Paul, you know, like, come on.
Yeah. All right, so what I think this book does really well is like the first chapter hooks you. Like it's super interesting. Mm-hmm. I think it hooks you. It hooks me. I think that for someone who doesn't read a lot of sci-fi, it's a very big turnoff, honestly. There's a lot of weird names. You get Gom Jabbar, and you get the Bene Gesserit, and you get all these words that you don't know.
Yeah.
And
don't necessarily know how to pronounce. Like,
yeah, right. And the only reason I know how to pronounce them is because I did the audiobook.
Right. And he does it for me.
And like if I read it, it's like Gom Jabbar.
Yes.
But like Paul is going through this test.
Yeah.
He's being tested by the Bene Gesserit. Mm-hmm. So, and he has to like put his hand in this box, and it's like, okay, you're gonna feel some pain, and it's like, okay, what is going on?
Yeah.
And you know,
and he's being a little like spooky with like the powers that the Bene Gesserit has. Like he hints that they can do some things, you know, like you get a little bit of a taste of like, okay, so like these two are kind of different than just like Duke Leto, you know, like just the other regular people that are around. Like they have some powers, but like, why are they testing Paul? You know, like what's the point of this scene? Like what's going on here? Also, he has like a dream, right? Like right at the beginning, he has a dream. And he's dreaming about Cheney. Like you learn that later.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's like already some foreshadowing going on, right? There's like, it has a little bit of like a princess vibe or something, you know, like, but like, it's like, okay, Paul also has some powers or some things that he may not fully understand yet. But they're specifically asking about his dreams, right? Like they understand that. And so he establishes that, yes, what he has is something real. It's not just like a weird dream that he has.
Yeah. And they say that like they're testing for humans, like only a human can pass this test. And so you're like, okay, what is this? It's super intriguing. And then like, I mean, that's kind of the chapter. He passes the test. Yep. Paul's a human. And then they move to
Paul.
Dune.
Paul the human. The hero of our story.
Paul the human Yay. He did it. And then basically they moved to Arrakis.
Yeah.
And this is the main planet that Dune takes place on.
Right. And this is where the book like slows down substantially.
Yeah, I would say screeches.
Yeah. Yeah. Tire marks in the road. Yeah.
It's a book that was written in the 60s, and you can tell that it was written in the 60s.
Yeah.
It like right now, I think the style for a lot of these fantasy sci-fi are action, get you hooked, and then you can build the political stuff in like book 2 and then finish it off with a big fight. Whereas Dune really kind of has this slow build.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, but it's hard to keep track of. It's really hard to remember all these crazy names, the mystical powers. You don't understand the world.
Yeah.
And so that gets a little difficult.
It does, yeah. You almost need to be taking notes, you know? Like, okay, so there are 6 major powers. And I think we've talked about this a little bit, but like playing the board game really helped me structure like who the players are, you know, because there are 6 distinct power groups. So just to name them quickly, right? Atreides, obviously the heroes of the story. Harkonnens, the obvious bad guys, right? The Fremen, and you can even kind of include in that just like the planet of Dune, right? Which is like a little bit of a character, like the worms. I mean, like there's some stuff going on there. They have their own agenda, right? The Space Guild, who are like not really a major. There aren't like really any named characters, you know. They're basically like an ominous threat. They're like in the background, except for that they like show up in the final scene of the book.
Right.
It's like the first time you ever like meet someone from the guild. Otherwise, people are just talking about the impact that they have. And then the Emperor. And I think when I first read it, I did not understand that there's a distinct difference between the Empire and the Space Guild. That like those are 2 separate entities, and that was super confusing.
Yeah, and I think you just named 5. The 6th is the Bene Gesserit.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Bene Gesserit, who
Yep.
also have their own thing going on, you know. But they appear to be like within everybody else, you know.
Yeah,
so like because it's like there's a Bene Gesserit in Atreides. There's the like head one with the Emperor, right? There's like obviously he shows later that there are some within House Harkonnen, and so it's like wow, these people are spread all around. They must just be like super powerful people. But it's like no, they unlike the Mentats, where they also have like everyone has a Mentat and they have superpowers or whatever, but the Mentat do not have like a single goal, right? They don't have like a coalition where they are like trying to influence events, where the Bene Gesserit do. They have their own agenda, and that's another thing that was like not totally distinct for me until I like played the board game basically and like recognized them as their own entity in the story.
And with all of these crazy names, crazy powers, don't really know what's going on. I struggled with the audiobook.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
The first time through, I don't think I picked up on anything. The second time through, I mean, like the first 30%, like the book 1 took me weeks to get through. And I ended up just getting it and reading it. And that was much better.
Yeah.
It was much better because you could like, oh, okay, like go back. It's like, okay, that's what this is. And you don't have to remember like all these crazy like syllables. You can like recognize the word, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
And so,
because I always get like Duncan,
the
Idaho,
book got a lot better after that. Yeah,
Thufir Howard, Gurney Halleck. Those 2 are the worst for me. Thufir Howard and Gurney Halleck. I get those mixed up all the time. And then like Dr. Yue too. I get like Thufir and Dr. Yue mixed up, because like they're both smart, you know, and like I don't know, I just can't keep them straight.
Yeah. So in order for this to not just become a podcast where we shit all over our favorite books and movies, so they move to Arrakis. And they do all these like political maneuverings.
Yep.
They're
meeting all the important people
some
of which actually aren't important. You find out like you know, like that guy never came
some
back.
of them die like 3 pages later.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny. We were talking with Amron, one of our listeners, and I was right kind of at the same spot that he was reading, and he was talking about Piter.
Oh, yeah.
And how he was a big part. And you're like, who?
Yeah.
And like Amron's like, Piter, like, he's like one of the main characters. Like, I like just read like through the part where he was just died.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, no, he's not.
He's not really that major of a character.
So I kind of thought that was funny.
Yeah. If you need a reminder, he is the Mentat for the Harkonnen, right? Like that's who he is, and he's the dude who dies when Dr. Yue tries to kill Vladimir. Piter DeVries dies instead, and he's the whole reason that the Harkonnens try to recruit Thufir Howard, who used to be the Atreides Mentat, right? Like that's why all of that moves around. But his main point as a character is to establish that like he is used to working with a Mentat. They're powerful, and the Harkonnens want power, but he also wants Thufir Howard to move over, and so he like has to die. You know,
right? Yep. So the Harkonnens are trying to like sow all this discord on the people that just came in to take over their planet. Like the Atreides come in, and the Harkonnens kind of have this power. Like already on the planet. The Fremen are doing their own thing. They're super dangerous. You're not supposed to talk to them. Paul's never going to be able to interact with them because Paul's being groomed to become the Duke, which is currently the position held by his father, and they start getting like kind of all of these like doubts because the Harkonnens are kind of sowing this political intrigue that, there's a traitor in the midst of the Harkonnens, and they're trying to get everyone to believe that it's Jessica, the Duke's concubine, who is Paul's mother.
Yes.
And there's all this kind of like shady stuff going on, and basically like it kind of comes to a climax at book. I don't think it's necessarily the climax of book 1, but during the rising action of book 1, basically Duke Leto is captured by the Harkonnens. Paul and Jessica escape, and what happens next, Dalton?
Right.
I don't want to talk all the time.
No. I think you've done a really great job. The thing I want before we move out of book 1 that I want to touch on is, especially on the reread, book 1 is very well done. It's extremely well put together. And when we talked in our icebreaker in the last episode, we mentioned that one thing that he does extremely well is letting characters act based only on the information that they have and the information that they might assume. Right.
Yes.
And so like Liet Kynes, right? He's actually maybe my favorite character in the book. I think he's like a genius character. And we can talk more about why that is exactly. But you get some like internal monologue, right? Where he's like observing the Duke, but he's also told to the reader that if you don't remember, he's like the planetologist, right? So like very early on, it's established the planetologist is on the side of the Harkonnens. Like we don't really know why, but like that's told to us as the reader. So you kind of like enter in with this like, almost you're seeing him through that filter. And his like actions through that filter, but then it doesn't always look like he's like totally on the Harkonnen side from his like internal monologue, right? Gurney Halleck and Thufir Hawat are both doing things that make sense based on the information that they have. Duncan Idaho gets drunk at one point, and he's like basically letting Jessica have it based on again on the information that he has, which is based on the information that Duke Leto is like told to him based on something that he had. So like all the way that information is moving around is really well done, and on the reread especially. It's really fun, but at the start of the book, it's like I don't understand why all these people are, it's just hard to follow.
Yeah.
So, but I think even if you just read the book, you could potentially go back and just read book 1 and get something out of it that they may have kind of missed. But you're right. End of book 1 is kind of roughly a third of the way through the book, and it basically is our call to action, right? It's like Paul finds out that he's now the Duke because his dad has died. Dr. Yue kind of like saves them a little bit, and so there's a little bit of depth in his character, although he's kind of a good guy, kind of a bad guy. He basically is just a neutral character, right? Yeah,
Dr. Yue is actually the Harkonnen spy.
Right, but he's the Harkonnen spy so he can get to Vladimir Harkonnen so he can try and kill him because he's like has his wife, right?
Yeah. But he's it's not Jessica.
It's not Jessica, right? It's revealed to actually be Yue.
But Yue's not really on the Harkonnen side because it's more political maneuvering. Right. He doesn't want his wife, and I think maybe his child. I don't quite remember.
Right.
Because they're being threatened, and so that's kind of that. And so
yes,
yeah.
So now Leto is dead. We now have Duke Paul Atreides, one of his first titles that he's going to acquire throughout the book. And they run off into the desert, right? And this is basically, like we said, this is kind of the start of the rising action, and you're like a third of the way through the book. So that's slow. But a lot of things like happen really quickly, and a lot of power gets shifted super quickly. All of a sudden, the Harkonnens are back in control. It's established that the Emperor's like on this side. He has these super scary like Sardaukar that everyone's like super scared of, and you don't really know what they can do, right? The Fremen are revealed to be like more than just like the dumb natives or whatever, right? Liet Kynes is again like starting to make some moves. And all of like the house guards get like scattered, right? So Thufir Hawat is off doing something. Gurney Halleck is doing something. Paul is basically like abandoned. He's like ripped out of this sense of safety of all his mentors, all these smart people who are around him, protecting him at all times. He is like all of a sudden he's like on his own, and he has to kind of like those first couple scenes where he's like walking through the desert. This is one of like the first things that kind of starts to happen where it's revealed that he kind of gets the desert, right? He's like, it's sort of natural to him.
He understands it.
He understands it. He's like figuring this stuff out. He's like telling his mom.
He's fulfilling a prophecy, basically.
Yeah, basically he starts fulfilling the prophecy. Which prophecy, this is a good thing to talk about. There is a ton of foreshadowing done in this book through prophecy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's really well done. Like it's super interesting because I really love foreshadowing in prophecies when on the reread you're picking up on it and you're like, oh yeah, like that is what's happening.
Right.
But on the first read through, you're like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Type. So,
and I think the feeling
really well
of that it's not all true, but it's not all untrue. You know, like there are some parts of the prophecy that are not perfectly met, or the prophecies. There's like so many going on, but also you can tell that like Jessica. And like her scenes and her internal monologue, you can tell she's kind of like winging it, but she's like playing off the prophecy. And she mentions that Bene Gesserit had been here before to like lay the groundwork for this, right? So they talk about prescience all the time, like that there's this ability to see the future, or at least paths in the future, and like get some hints and clues from it. And that some of what the Fremen are talking about as prophecy is that, right? That like someone has said something to them and now it's natural. They've been kind of prepared or like conditioned for Paul and Jessica to kind of have the road laid out for them. They still have to like do it. It's not just given to them, but like the way is kind of cleared a little bit.
Yeah. And those are the prophecies that the Fremen are acting upon. And this is kind of right around the same time where Paul starts to go into the timeless state and see the future, because he's in such close contact with the spice and he's been able to access that more so than what he's had before. Like, you know, he's been having these dreams, these premonitions and dreams, but he's now in this like state. And kudos to Frank Herbert, because I really like the way that this is written, because the way that Paul is experiencing like his like waking premonitions entering the timeless state is super confusing to him, and it's super confusing to the reader at first. Like what's going on? And I think that he does a really good job of putting you in Paul's headspace at that point. Yeah. And so I really like that. But this is kind of where it's starting to, you know, activate. Like his like OP powers are starting to come in. Yeah. Right? Like he's starting to actually be able to see the future in like a waking state.
For sure. And like his mentat training, his like Bene Gesserit training, like these things are starting to...
Yeah, you start to realize that he's just a badass.
Right.
He's just like trained really well all around.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah. And that's fun, I would say, to like watch evolve. Like these things that you have heard like... Oh, Paul, like just in his internal monologue where he will lean on Bene Gesserit training, or he'll like lean on mentat training. And it's like fun as the reader to be like, oh, like that's why these things are happening. And it feels reasonable that he could do these things. I have I don't even know if I would call it a problem. I would say his character in the scenes in the desert does a very fast turn. It's maybe not a full 180. Yeah. Yep. But he like coming out of his first like prescient dream, and the way he like talks to his mother and the way he just behaves as a character from then on is very, very different. And I think I would give it like a B. Like, I don't think it's a failure, but I think it could have been played out a little bit slower and a little bit more methodically, maybe just a little bit better. Because I think it almost feels like two different characters. Like the Paul in book one is like super young, and he's obviously intelligent and he has great training and everything, but he's like immature, almost might be the word to use. Like he just doesn't get it, you know, he's just kind of a kid. And then all of a sudden he's like a man, you know, and he's like, and I get like, there are some things that are meant to happen to force him to grow up quickly, right? He faces real combat. His dad dies. He's thrown into the desert. People are after him. Like, you got to grow up fast. I get that.
Yes.
But I think it happens maybe just a touch too quickly for me.
I do wish that we could see a little bit more of that growth.
Yeah.
What I've always kind of attributed it to is that he is now the Duke, right? He has that title, and he's seen how his dad acts, and he sees the authority, and I think it's almost like he's playing a character to start out. Like, he's like, okay, well, I need to do this now. It's my
fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Fake it till you make it. And it's, you know, we don't get to really see the internal monologue of, oh shoot, I need to fake this till I make it. It's more just portrayed like, oh, he's like this grown-up person now. Yeah. And so I agree with you. I wish that we could see a little bit more of that growth, a little bit more rising action. Let's talk about the what I think really makes him grow up really quick, and that's his fight with Jameis. So they run across some Fremen in the desert, as you do. As you do. And they make pretty good friends with
Stilgar.
Stilgar, yeah. I can never remember like the pronunciation of him for whatever reason, but Stilgar. And they make pretty good friends, and you know, I mean, like, minus the whole like we want to kill Jessica thing. Like,
they get over that.
they get over that. They make up, and they kind of proceed back to kind of the Fremen homeland.
Yes. CH
something.
I forget the name of it, but CH
Jabbar.
something. Yeah.
Tabar.
Tabr, however you say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Tabor.
And
I don't know.
so, yep. So they go there, and then Paul gets challenged by Jameis.
Or actually, man, now that I'm thinking about it, it might be Jessica. I think I just told you that it was. It might be. I think it's Jessica that gets challenged, and Paul has to like champion for her. Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. Regardless,
there's a fight.
There's a fight, and this is where, when I was kind of hesitating, agreeing with you. I do think that Paul grows up really fast, and he does it there. But like, I think you kind of get to see that growing up in this fight, because during the entire fight, Paul can like kind of see the future, right? Like, so he's going to win the fight unless he intentionally throws it,
right?
But
he's also just like crazy well trained. So
he's also crazy well trained. But Paul doesn't necessarily realize at the start that it's a fight to the death. Yeah. And so all the Fremen start to think that he's like toying with Jameis. He's like messing with him because he's like sideswiping. He's like, dancing around. He's not actually going in for the kill when he could have easily done that. And throughout that fight, I think Paul grows up really quickly when he realized, I have to like kill a human, a Fremen.
Right.
And when he does, then I think that kind of seals it. He's like, Paul is like, okay, well, this is real now. Yeah. And then Jessica yells at him. Yeah. It's like, you can't, like, Jessica's like, you can't, like, get the bloodthirst of this. Like, you can't have, you can't enjoy this, or else, like, from the prophecy and whatever, all the premonitions, like, this is not good. So Jessica kind of, like, combats Paul at that point. And yeah, so I think we get to see a lot of Paul's growth during that fight. Yeah. And like the realization there. And that's kind of when they start to get kind of like brought into the Fremen world.
For sure. And I think that fight, it's a little, I think at face value, it's a little like obvious or maybe cliche. But I think it's super integral. I think it's very well timed. And I think it's really well executed, like you said, because from a pacing perspective, after book 1, I think he does a good job of like an action point, and then like we talk about tension points, right? These like kind of this bumpy road up in rising action of like tension in the story, and then a little bit of relief and tension in the story. And I think overall we've seen that really well, right? It's like tension in are they going to survive the assault? Tension, are they going to survive the desert? Tension, are they going to survive the first contact with the Fremen? And now it's like, can they integrate into their world? And the fight really, I think you're totally right, it really represents that, right? Because again, Frank Herbert is showing this real proficiency for how, what viewpoint, what perspective, what point of view do the characters in the story have, and how would they act differently given the events that are taking place? And the Fremen have a totally different culture. It's very foreign. They have assumptions. They have things that they base their culture on and their nation on, that are confusing and unknown to Paul and Jessica, and vice versa. Because like you said, what Paul is trying to do, he's trying to draw first blood, because in his culture, if you do that, then at that point you can ask for a surrender, and the person's allowed to surrender, and that's not considered like cowardly or whatever. But he has to get to that point. And so he's actually trying to just injure him. That's like the main thing that he's struggling with. And that's why he's like dancing around. And they all take it poorly, but what he's trying to do is give him a way out. And then he actually offers that, and they're all like, how dare you insult him so.
Wow, you would do that?
Right, you big dick. And like for him, that's like a totally normal thing to do, and he's actually trying to do the right thing. And so I really love that. I love the clashing of cultures, and you get to like, the fight ends up representing so much more than just like Paul has to fight someone, right? Like that's not like, there's a lot more going on. And that like concept, that like difference in Fremen culture versus like just normal people on the planet, is one of the reasons why I love Liet Kynes. And why he's such a cool character to me, because he is like sort of bridging this gap, right? Like he is a Fremen, but he's also he's very educated. He's very integrated into like the regular world, the outsider world, whatever you want to call it. And so he gets to kind of like bridge that, I think, for the reader. He also becomes like a mechanism for Herbert to do some like world building, right? Like Kynes is the one who, in a flashback, explains to us how spice is made, and you start to understand the ecology and the life cycle of Dune, right, of Arrakis. So, okay, the reason there's no water is because the worms keep turning it into spice, and like that's the like reason why the worms like defend spice so like fervently, is because like that's basically their young, and like that's why they're so territorial about it. And, like all these things kind of get like explained to you from this character that has this super interesting arc, again, of like he was told to us very early, like the planetologist is a spy. Oh my gosh, you're for the bad guys. You don't like him. But then you get these internal monologues, and he's like, he kind of likes Duke Leto, and he kind of likes Paul, but he's not letting go of his own agenda. And that's the other thing, is you realize like he's using the Harkonnen, right? He has his own agenda. It's been told to me, the reader, that the Fremen aren't developed enough to do that, right? They aren't like, quote, smart enough, or they don't like have enough of a solid culture to like have their own agendas, right? But Liet Kynes is kind of like championing that for you in the story. Like he's the one that's like, like when he really, I think, turns onto the Atreides is when Jessica says, we are going to maintain the botanical garden for the future Dune that is green.
Yeah.
And we can share this plant life, this exotic plant life with the rest of the planet. And he's like, you're not just here for this, you like, that's what we want. You're not just here for the spice. Like you have vision for this planet that is shared with me. Maybe I need to align more with you than with the Harkonnen, right?
Yeah. His goal is Dune. Like that is what he wants to build. And you see that kind of with the Fremen, where they, they've been gathering the water, and so that they can turn this desert planet that it never rains into this lush green forest. And that is his motivation. That's his goal. And he's going to align with anybody that goes for that, or is on his side there.
Yeah. Which is cool when we like learn the ecology of Dune, that water can never exist on Dune without being turned into spice. Right. Or without being hidden from the worms. And so this like future of a green Dune cannot coexist with the spice.
Yes.
And that's the
and
other
the spice
thing.
is what draws everyone to Dune.
Yes. And it's like the cornerstone, like without spice, there's not space travel. Like it's the cornerstone of the entire empire's economy.
Right.
And I think that's really played out more in like future books. This like duality between like these two things cannot coexist. But Kynes is basically the one for us that's like, oh, the Fremen have this vision, they have this hope and this dream, and it can't coexist with spice. It cannot coexist with like people coming to their planet, and the current, I don't know, system, the current economic system of the world. Like, how's that going to play out? He kind of like represents all of that in like one person. I know that like in the movie he's cast as a female character. Which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Like I thought that was kind of cool because like he doesn't have to be male. Like there's nothing about his character that makes him male. Like the only thing is that he's like Chani's uncle. I don't remember if it's his dad or an uncle. Actually, I don't remember the family tree there. I think it's her dad. But either way, it's like now he's the mom or the aunt or whatever.
Right,
like,
yeah.
So it's just like I'm interested to see like how she does because like I said, Liet Kynes is my favorite character. So still named Liet Kynes, by the way.
Yeah. If we were doing the 60-second summary, this is where I would say that Paul falls in love with Zendaya. Jessica drinks some like poisoned water, and then a couple of babies are born. So,
right.
I mean, and then we kind of have a time skip.
We kind of have a time skip, and it's an appropriate time skip. But yeah, what happens to Jessica is like not clear at all. Like at first,
the Reverend Mother thing.
Yeah, the Reverend Mother thing, the water of life.
It's just like I don't know what's happening, but okay.
But okay. I think it's explained better like later when Paul like does it because you have a little bit of a better understanding of like what the worms are and like what's kind of going on. Yeah. But yeah, like at that moment you're like, this is super confusing.
Right. Let's jump a couple of years.
Okay.
So during the time skip, right? Like all of a sudden, like Paul and Jessica are kind of like part of the culture. They are Fremen, right?
Yeah.
They're
and that's really the boundary, by the way, of like book 2 and 3 is like that time skip and like getting into now they are part of the culture. Now they're established as Fremen, and Paul is becoming like a leader at the start of it. They're
very much looking at him as a leader, and something that we kind of touched on earlier in the podcast, right? Like the Fremen are looking for Paul because it's been prophesized that Paul is going to come. He's going to know their ways. He's going to be an outsider that knows their ways.
Mohadib.
And he has all of these Mohadib. Hey, another title.
Yep, another title.
Yeah, so now he is Duke Mohadib.
Yep. And the
Kwisatz
Haderach.
Actually, not yet, right? Like
he's not officially yet, but like that's what they think he might be. They like are whispering it. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's kind of like they start to follow him because all of these things is like I don't know. It just felt natural. Like there are a couple of things that. I think it was like why did you tie your boots like that or something like
something like
small, completely off, and it's like. I don't know. It just felt natural, and everything points to, hey, he's the Kwisatz Haderach,
right? And
he knows our ways. He's going to be, basically our savior. And so we, this is in the movies. You would have, go the distance and see the training montage. And, and what kind of kicks off book 3?
Book 3 is the turning point between we're out of the training montage and now Paul has to become the leader, right? The last thing that he has not done is he has not ridden a worm. And real quick, I told you, I had kind of forgotten that this was a mechanic.
I straight up did. Yeah, I
and
did
it
not
is,
remember at all.
It's so cool. Like just the idea of it, like, oh, if you pull the worm's ring, then it doesn't like sand getting all up in its business, so it turns and you can ride it up. And that's how we turn them, is we just pull it. And it's like, holy shit, that works. Like, you know, like mentally,
that's so cool. Yeah.
You can like connect that and you're like, oh my God, that totally makes sense.
I honestly think that Herbert had that idea and then wrote a book.
Right, exactly. I think that's probably true. He had an idea for Sand Planet, massive worms, let's go. You know, and he wrote a book
we can
about
figure something out.
Yeah, this will be fine. I love that idea
so cool.
and that mechanic. And it explains so much about the Fremen culture, right? How they are like these like well-established fighters and they're like everywhere. And it's like, oh, they have what, you know, Duke Leto established early on as like desert power, right? And Paul like comes back to that concept, this like war concept of who owns the desert on Dune. It has the most power, and it's like they do. They have mobility in the desert. They can, you know, they can ride the worms. They can later use them to attack people, which is crazy, you know. This is actually like a mechanic in the board game, which is kind of fun. If you haven't played it, where basically the Fremen can just like pick up their dudes and move them somewhere else like that, and they can just move on anywhere on the board. They're not limited by like the areas, you know, because it's like they ride worms. I don't know.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
I played the Fremen in our playthrough. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were a very fun faction to play.
For sure.
Not saying that any of the factions didn't look fun to play, but the Fremen just looked awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Okay, so sidebar, something we haven't mentioned but it is important. Paul and Jessica have been returning the training, right? So there's training montage of them, but there's also training montage going on of like the Fremen are becoming better fighters, and they were already like capable of taking on the Sardaukar like one-on-one, which we've seen, and like freaks everybody out because they're like, oh my God, the Sardaukar are like invincible, right? And there's this like theme coming on of like, well, Dune is basically the same training program, you know, so they've kind of established this. And now they have like the weirding way, right? They have Jessica's way of fighting alongside them. So the Fremen are like super powered at this point. And they also have worms.
And this is the part where Paul starts to realize that, hey, like, you know, he's seen all the training. He's seen how much they progressed. And it's like, this is a formidable force. Like I can coalesce all of these people and, you know, use them to kind of take back what is mine. Right. And so he also drinks the poison, the water of life.
Yes.
I probably should know this. Yeah. Water of life.
It's like, I don't think it's blood, but it's like a secretion of the like baby worms.
I really don't like that word.
Right, you don't like the word secretion? It's like, it's the same, if I understand correctly, it is the same, or at least a similar substance as like the pre-spice mass that Liet Kynes like talks about, and it's like the substance that reacts with water to make spice. And like that's what he's drinking. That's why it's poisonous, is because it's like converting water in your body into spice. Yep. So, but yeah, he does that. Side note, right before that, he has a bit of a test of leadership, right, where he has to either kill Stilgar or not, right? He has to either challenge Stilgar or not after riding the worm. Because they're like, well, that was the last thing you needed to do to be a man, and now we all want you to lead us, and we want to have what he keeps referring to as the jihad, right? Like, they're ready. They're like, it's wartime. Right, we need you to lead us. Go kill Stilgar, you know? And he's like, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So, Stilgar...
let's talk about Stilgar a little bit.
So, because I didn't quite put all of these pieces together. It's just like one of those names that kind of blended in, and then when it came up, it's like, yeah, that's a guy. But Stilgar is who Paul and Jessica run into initially in the desert, right?
Yes.
And so he
also, do you remember in book 1 where like the Duke throws a dinner for like important people? Stilgar is at that dinner.
Oh, okay.
He's like the Fremen that shows up. Like he's like, you know, like, so he's actually basically the first, he's not truly, but he's basically one of the first major Fremen characters that you meet. And he's kind of like, he's the one that everyone's like, oh, who's this? You know, like the mysterious Fremen here. Like that's Stilgar. He's also Liet Kynes' brother.
Yep. So there's a lot of connections there that just were not super apparent to me. Yeah. And so everything's connected, and
and he's the Paul, like leader of the CH where they all live, right? So
yes.
CH Tabor. And that's like why the challenging that Paul has to do with his leadership is so important, because they're like one of the most well-established CHs at this point. He's Liet Kynes' brother, who like everybody like referred to as like, you know, like, oh, like Liet says we have to do this and that. Like Liet was kind of like their previous like cross CH leader, right? And Stilgar is like kind of in that role. I don't think he's like officially in it, but he's like, he kind of fills it in a little bit. And so specifically the challenging of like Stilgar represents more than just like leadership of like the tribe and like their own CH, right? It's much larger than that.
Right. Yep. Alrighty. So Paul ends up killing him, right? No,
he does not do that.
Yeah. Paul's a good dude.
He's a good dude.
Breaker of chains.
Right.
Paul. So after he's no, that's not the right word.
Drunk.
That's not English.
Yeah.
After he is consumed,
imbibed
the water of life, he has then fulfilled the prophecy and become the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yes.
Which, God, I like knowing how to say these words. They are really fun words to say.
They're kind of fun.
Yeah. The Kwisatz Haderach. The Bitty Desert. They're just like, I don't know. I just really like the words.
Theming is good.
Yep. So he's become the Kwisatz Haderach.
And at this point, like, the Fremen are totally OP, right? Like,
yeah.
Paul is already the best character on the Atreides side. You know what I mean? Like, in the game.
Right.
And so now, like, you get him, and they have a Reverend Mother, and they have, like, people who were already equivalent to the best combatants in the galaxy, but have now been upgraded, and they have worms. Right? Like,
yep. Yeah. Yeah. And so they have this massive force.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do with it?
They blow up the shield wall.
Oh.
They nuke the shield wall. Turns out they found atomics at one point. They reunite with Gurney Halleck, right? He's been like running around with mercenaries and stuff. So like they reunite with him. They blow up the shield wall and they like retake Arrakis. In a pretty devastating and decisive battle. They also have the storms. We forgot about that. We haven't like talked about the storms too much. Like there are storms, you know, they like blow everything away. They're basically like hurricanes, but like more powerful and on sand.
Yeah.
And they like use that, right? They like attack during a storm where everyone's like, no one attacks during a storm. And they're like, well, if we blow up the shield wall, then like we can attack during the storm because we are Fremen and you can't do anything about it. Also, again, we have worms. So
yeah. Also, just like side note, when that event card gets drawn in the game, devastating.
Yeah.
Also, like I completely forgot that happened in the book, so I just was not expecting that event card in the game.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, this is different.
Right. And the player who like played it, we were all like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing. That card is
do that.
Yeah.
That has to be a misprint.
Right. It feels that way. Yeah. I actually liked it better that we got all forgotten because it was
it made it very like exciting and thematic.
Very
except that I was the Fremen, I didn't know it was coming. But other than that, it was super thematic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it takes away their protection, right?
Yeah.
So, and Paul is able to lead the Fremen in this kind of fight and take it back.
I think the only thing I would say here is like I think I would have liked a little more of the like combat. I think it kind of happens in the background a little bit, like the actual combat. Like basically you were hearing the perspective of the battle told mostly from the perspective of the Emperor, who is a new character, newly introduced. Inherently not a bad idea. Let's introduce the Emperor. We'll have him on the planet. He's like now going to be a named, character that we understand and like get to interface with. And Vladimir Harkonnen, who like, it's kind of fun to like watch his fall, especially like in the Emperor's eyes. But I think like they will like they will tell that the battle's going on, but like there's be an open door and they see like figures, clashing in the background, and then someone slams the door shut or whatever. It's just maybe not like my favorite, and I think I've been looking forward to this fight so much, that like I kind of miss it. I'm like, oh, I wanted to hear more about the like crash over the walls with like worms,
right.
With like a 1,000 screaming Fremen and they, battling in the streets. I just think it would have been fun.
I wonder if Frank Herbert doesn't feel like he's a strong combat writer. Maybe that's it.
Maybe.
I don't know. He needed Tolkien to come in and write that scene for him.
Write the war scenes, yeah. Because you're right that all of his fights are one-on-one.
Right. There's no like large-scale... I mean, there are large-scale battles in the book, but they're not as exciting as I want them to be.
Yeah, they're always told from like a single character's perspective who's kind of on the outskirts of it. So then he like sets up this other fight so that there can be a fight. Right? Because we kind of like missed the battle. And so it's like, we kind of still need a fight. So he goes and fights like Fade Ralpha, who I think is fairly well established as a character. I think he did an okay job of like bringing him in as like the heir. Vladimir Harkonnen's always talking about him. He's shown to be cocky. He has the arena fight earlier in the book, which we didn't cover too much. But he's shown to be like cruel, cunning, a great fighter, great instincts. So we get a lot of that like built up. I think, though, from a character standpoint, it's kind of like, does this character just exist so that Paul has someone to fight one-on-one at the end of the book? And it's like, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, is it giving Paul his like personal climax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And is that a little cheap for like this story, this amazing story that has been like wrought for us, that like is taking place in like 11,000 AD, that it still kind of all comes down to one-on-one combat. It's like, it's not my favorite, but it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
It works. Again, 60s, would have been a very common writing mechanism at the time. So from that perspective, it feels natural to the story, but it's maybe just not my favorite.
I didn't love the one-on-one. I do love kind of the ultimatum that Paul and the Emperor, like, they kind of have going back and forth. Where
Yes.
Paul is like, I'm going to destroy spice production forever unless you abdicate the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I really like that. I think that's a really interesting, like, kind of way that Paul's a great politician, right? Like, he understands how to resolve things without necessarily, I mean he just like killed everyone, but like
He's a bit strong-handed, but
I mean,
Dude can play his cards. I will say that.
Dude can play his cards, but if you don't follow through with your threats, no one's ever gonna respect you.
Right.
Anyways,
I just don't want to be at a negotiating table with him.
right.
I don't want to play Dune with actual politicians.
Right. I do like that, and that's kind of like around that same time, and
Yeah.
Fade Rotha is kind of trying to stop that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was the more interesting part of
Totally.
that whole conflict, rather than just like the one-on-one. Like,
I definitely agree. I think it's like
whatever.
I think we get the feeling that he's like solving the problem in an interesting way, and like
Yes.
not necessarily in a way that like I have come to expect as the reader. Right, one-on-one combat I expect, and he's going to win because he's like the god or whatever, and says he's a Kwisatz Haderach, he's Mohadib. It's like he survived the Gom Jabbar. He can't take down Fade Rotha. This guy sucks, and so it's like I get that, but. You're right, the political maneuvering, and the drama that's going on with like Shani now is like relegated to being a concubine. Jessica super resonates with that because she was stuck with that. It's like,
right.
Oh, there's so much like good character stuff that's coming out because of the resolution of this problem that I didn't even think. And like all this has been almost foreshadowed because like the Princess Irulan has been talking to us at the start of every chapter of the book, and you're like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
She's not a named character yet.
Yeah. Who is this author?
Right.
And
how does she know everything in my father's house? Writings of early life of Mohadib, and like how does she know all of this?
Right. Yeah. And like I really enjoyed throughout my first read of the book trying to figure out who that was.
Yeah.
And like I was slightly disappointed because I was, I thought I kind of solved the puzzle, but like I think it's an interesting and a good way to end the book. But like I was like, ooh, like who is it? And the fact that it was like a completely like new character,
Yeah.
I thought I was kind of disappointed in my first read through. I still think that it was a good way to do it, like, but it was more like I wanted to solve it, like,
Yeah.
because it seemed like kind of like this mystery throughout the entire book. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really, if not for the side storyline and how of Jessica and her like personal trauma and her personal like hurt and pain over not being Duke Atreides' wife, I think it would fall flat. I think it might feel cheap, but you don't feel like her. Even at the end of the story, you still have like not heard her say anything. So like you don't really feel like her being sold away. Like that's not really all that important to you. What you feel is like Janie's pain.
Yes.
And that I thought that was a really fun kind of
Yeah.
twist on like how that, what again could be a little bit cliche, like, oh, you marry, like it's solved through marriage, like you, the important guy, marries the other important guy's daughter. Like, okay, I've seen that before.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I think that could be a little cliche or wrought out, but the effect that it has on the characters, it comes across as like interesting. And it's specifically why I didn't see it coming, right?
Yeah.
Because there is Janie,
Yeah.
and because their love is really well established, and we as the reader trust it.
Doesn't follow through like you're expecting it. So
Yeah.
Yep. And then kind of like the falling action / rising action for the rest of the series.
Yes. Yeah.
Is kind of Paul takes control of the empire. Like he is Emperor, Duke, Mohadib, Kwisatz Haderach, Paul. Which, come on, that's a super lame ending to that title. And
he also has one more name, right? He has like the Fremen name that we didn't talk about, that like their CH name. It's something kind of short. I forget what is it? Usul.
Totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it's like his like private name for use only within like the CH or whatever. But just add it to the list.
Yep. And so like Paul is kind of like, he's taken over. He's the emperor, and now he's kind of like realized the beast that he's created in the Fremen.
Yeah.
So.
And where do we go from here, right? And I think a lot of the closing action or falling action is told from Jessica's perspective. I think that was probably a smart choice.
Yeah.
Because again, she's the one who's like able to kind of put in perspective like Chani's pain for us. And we're also not really like used to hearing Chani's perspective, but we are used to hearing Jessica's perspective. That's been very common in the story. So that feels like familiar. And she's like stepped out of the role of being like an active character, like really. Basically, when she becomes a Reverend Mother, like she kind of steps out of like the role of being an active character, and she's kind of more like an observer, and she helps us as the reader put into perspective what's happening. So she becomes, I think, really important as a narrative tool, as opposed to actually like someone who's influencing the story very strongly.
Yeah.
So I think she's a smart way to like close the book out. But you're right. There's like it's interesting because things feel resolved, but if you like check in with like, okay, what was everybody's goal? Like the Fremen don't have what they want yet. Right. The Emperor does not have what he wants. The Space Guild don't have what they want. The Harkonnens are basically eliminated, so like sucks for them. But Atreides is definitely back. They're not wiped out anymore, and they're even in a stronger position because obviously they have this like army of crazy Fremen, and like but like they're not quite safe yet. You get that feeling.
Right. Yeah. It definitely opens up kind of an exciting path for the next couple of books.
Yes.
Like where's it going to go? Like it's kind of like up in the air. You don't really know what's going to happen. There's a lot of people that are hurt. There's a lot of people that are in power.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, what is going to be the next conflict? What are we going to focus on next?
Yeah. I do think in this like closing action that some of the side characters get good little resolutions to their personal arcs. Specifically like Gurney Halleck and Thufir Hawat, who are two distinct characters. If like me, you did not know that.
They're the same person.
They have like kind of these like personal things that they're trying to do, revenge, Duke Leto, and like they have to kind of figure out how to do that. And so like they have these like I like their stories. I don't think they spends too much time on them. I think he spends like just enough time on them. And I think I like their endings. I think they have a nice close out to their personal arcs.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you read any of the other books?
I have not, and I have. First of all, you haven't either, right?
I have not. No,
Yeah.
No.
I have done a bit of personal, like, synopsis level reading of, like, kind of some of the things that happen and a little bit of where the story goes. And the reason I did that is because I've heard mixed things.
Same.
I've heard it compared to, and again, we've not read it, so, take this with a grain of salt.
Enders?
What's that?
No, sorry, go for it.
Did you say Enders?
Yeah,
because I was going to say Ender's Game. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right. You nailed it.
I said Enders, and then like you like looked at me. I was like, oh wait, maybe that wasn't where he was going. Sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna shut up.
You are the Kwisatz Haderach. You can see the future.
I am. I can see the future.
Mohadib. I love, by the way, just the narrator for the audiobook. He has like such a great, like he sounds like the Tusken Raiders, like
yeah,
right, like they have
Mohadib,
Mohadib. Like they're like super into it. Let's go kill everyone.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think next time we play the board game, I said anyways as if I was going to move on, and now I'm not. Next time we play the board game, anytime you attack somebody as the Fremen, you can be like, Mohadib! And like,
Mohadib!
like, jump onto their stuff. Like, fuck, how'd you get there? I have worms, bitch.
Get away! Stop that.
If you kill me, I come back. That's the other Fremen power, by the way. They don't die.
Yeah, they're just annoying.
They're just annoying. Anyways.
So it's kind of like the Ender series.
It's kind of like the Ender series, right? Where it just gets a little spacey. It gets a little sci-fi. All the cool ideas were kind of implemented in the first book. And so now there's like some other things that are like I was telling Nelson, I believe one of the books takes place like 2,500 years in the future or something like that, which happens in Ender's Game too, by the way. It's like 3,000 years in the future or something. So like these large time skips, like things are kind of getting a little broken maybe, and maybe spinning a little bit out of control. But again, haven't read it. I've read those synopses, and when I was reading them, I was like, that's kind of a weird direction to take, but like, okay, I guess you can do that. And so I think I'm interested in them. I would like to read them at some point, but I would like to read them at some point because I really like Dune. I think if they stand, do they hold up on their own? From what I've read, from what I've seen from other people, maybe not, but they might hold up if you really like Dune.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard / research. So I'm really excited for you to read them and let me know.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So
yeah, right.
You took that hit, so I can.
you'll take this hit.
I'll put it in somewhere after Wheel of Time.
Yeah. So
and also
2026.
Yeah, 2026 about then. That's what. Yeah. So check back in.
Yeah. We'll be on episode 75.
And we have not gotten far.
Yeah, no.
We're coming up on
Kwisatz Haderach.
So this is like somewhere is this episode 40?
This is titled 40.
Titled 40.
We have like some specials and we have halves and we have
Firesides.
So
like 10
I think
or so.
we have like over 50 published episodes, but
Yeah.
this is like main episode number 40.
Yeah, and we're coming up on 2 years. Just for for you, the listener, we record, and we talked about this before, but we recorded our first episode over like the weekend after Thanksgiving of 2019.
Yes.
We released it in like January. It took us a little while to figure out how to edit and like where to put it and stuff like that. So it released later, but we are now in like late October at the release of Dune the movie. So we personally are coming up on 2 years of recording together, which is a pretty fun, exciting milestone for us.
Yeah, it's absolutely fun. We're gonna have to do something. Let's do like a fun 2-year something. I don't know, maybe not an episode, but we'll figure out something fun to do.
Something.
Yeah. So just to tease that, there's something coming. We don't actually know what it is either, but it's going to be exciting.
This is the episode of promises, apparently. Promises that we have to figure out how to keep.
Yeah, we're reading Wheel of Time. We're seeing Dune this weekend. We're going to do something crazy here in a couple weeks for 2 years.
Yep, I'm going to shout Mohadib every time I play the Fremen.
Mohadib! Oh, that's great. Alrighty, so we are kind of nearing the end of this, and I do want to ask the question that I ask on all of these, and kind of what is your favorite part about Dune?
Yeah.
Not necessarily scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just attribute. Wide open.
What do you like about Dune? Like because I feel like it's a book that has a lot of different facets to it.
It does.
And so what do you like about Dune? What brings it in? What is a reason that you wanted to do a book analysis on Dune?
Yeah, it's a really smart question for this book specifically, because you're right. There's so many right answers to this question. It could be politics, it could be world building, it could be character development, it could be the like tech system.
Yes,
I would say personally, probably like the ecology of the worms. I think that is my favorite part of the book. I love that. Because it's so easy to say, like, it's a desert planet, check the box, right?
Right, yes.
But, like, going through, like, Liet Kynes is constantly explaining, like, why you can't just add water to Dune, right, to Arrakis. People are like, oh, why don't you just blow up the poles? And he's like, it's cost prohibitive, right? That's not true. The reason is because the worms would turn it into spice. Like, it wouldn't work. And so there's these, like, huge, like, planet, and so just writing in a planetologist, man, I just love Liet Kynes. Writing in a planetologist was such a great idea. Because at first you're like, oh, it's a desert planet. This is kind of an odd, boring setting. And you start to dive into it, and it's like, no, there's these worms. There's a struggle over water. Here's how it affected the Fremen culture, right? That they use water as like currency, and they like dry out, they like not desecrate, but desiccate the bodies of the dead to like draw the water out of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because the water belongs to the tribe, not to the individual. And like just all these like things that get like built out from the fact that like worms exist. They ride the worms, the worms eat water, they turn it into spice. The spice like creates a whole economy for an entire galactic empire. And it's all focused on worms, Like the whole story really like pivots on that. And that's why the worms are on the cover of like everything, right? Like,
also, they're really cool.
They're really cool, yeah. But that's why like you always see them in like all of like the theming, all of the like the book covers, the like fan arts, right? The promotional content, like all of that. It'll feature a worm because like they're badass, So
they really are.
From a story building, from a world building perspective, I think they're just excellently executed, and I really enjoy them.
That is very similar to mine, and I'm not going to change it because I would have said it if
you have integrity.
So, yeah. Mine is kind of slightly meta in the sense that I really like how things interact with the rules that have been set in place in Dune. Right? So we had talked about the information. We talked about how like you can't just blow up the poles. But I think that the world building in Dune is super interesting, and it's super like well thought out, and it kind of makes sense for the rules that have been set in place. And that kind of goes into the cultures that the Fremen have, right? And kind of how everybody acts when they're with Fremen, how Paul acts when he's with the Fremen, when he meets the Fremen. They have these cultures and how he gets perceived for that. And I think that Frank Herbert just does a really great job of setting those rules and not breaking them, and understanding how different aspects of the story interact with those rules, like how the Fremen act with the water versus the worms act with the water versus the galactic
Yeah.
the final galactic empire.
This is the last one, guys, I promise.
Yeah. How the empire acts with like the water product of the spice, right? And so it's just like multifaceted, and how everything kind of revolves around these set rules. And I think a lot of authors do that really well. I just think it's really amplified in Dune, and that's why I just really enjoyed the book.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, especially like considering that this is well before hard magic, right? Like this is this is back in like well-established soft magic land. And there are I think you would say pretty solidly that Dune is a hard tech book, like instead of magic, it's technology. But I think it's a hard tech book, right? Like it has rule. The only thing is like Spice has like this weird, like, you know, spacey, like, oh, you can see the future. But like even that has like some set rules around it, right? That it's a poison. Yeah. Like now you have to, if you take it, you have to keep taking it or you will
It's
die.
LSD.
Yeah, it's right, exactly. It like you have to keep taking it. And like that shields always attract worms. Cool, I can accept that.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that like shields will like blow up when hit with lasers, right? Okay, I can accept that. You know, I don't need to know how shields work. I don't need to know how lasers work. I just know like that there is this rule and it's consistent.
Right.
And it's one of the reasons we like Ender's Game so much too, right? That like it's sci-fi, yes. There are some spacey things that happen, but if you can accept a couple of key rules or a couple of key like logic jumps, then everything falls pretty cleanly out of that, at least within the book Ender's Game.
Yes.
Then, and Dune kind of feels that way too. There's like a couple of key rules around like worms and how they work and how the planet works and blah, blah, blah. And like once you accept that and like how a couple of the key technologies work, it's like, okay, I don't need to understand intricacies to make the same decisions that the characters made. And I think that's a good sign of like a hard technology system.
Yep. Totally agree. Basically, all we're saying is you all should read the book.
Right. You probably did because you listened to the episode.
I really hope you did.
If not, I'm so sorry. This is not your episode, man.
Oh, shoot. Spoiler alert for the last hour or
yeah.
so.
Right.
My bad. I should have said that. But yeah, like
now at least you have some ammo to, you know, convince your friends, hopefully, to read it. And as always, we like talking about this because we like talking about the good and the bad. And like we've talked about, we're trying to transition into being a little bit more critical of books, even books that we like. So I think you heard us do that a little bit here tonight. I hope that was like fun for you. If you totally disagree, then we have a Discord and you can come yell at me. Or you can do what Mike did. You can track me down at a wedding and you can yell at me about how the prequels are actually good.
Dude, it was hilarious. So like walking up, like I'd like walk up to the two of you. Mike's just yelling at you. I'm like, okay, cool. And I went and did something else. I come back. Mike is still. He goes, okay, and then Attack of the Clones. And then like, oh, we are only 30% of the way through this thing. Okay, so that's good.
Yes, yeah. It was a really fun conversation. It helped that we've both been drinking a little bit. It was a wedding, we've both been drinking a little bit, just enough to like get fiery about stuff that like really doesn't matter all that much. That's where it gets fun, right?
Right. Yep. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this. Please come hang out on the Discord. We're gonna start reading Wheel of Time, and sometime in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So I'm really.
We promise it will be sooner than that. I don't fully know if we'll have a book club meeting in 2021. I don't know if we can promise that. Maybe we can try, but it will certainly be sooner than 2025.
Yes. Well, I mean, you can promise whatever you want, Dalton.
Okay, I will have a book club.
It's your integrity on the line, not mine.
Yes.
But as always, it was great hanging out with you. I'm really excited that we got to talk through this book. I'm really excited that we picked this one because the movie's coming out. It's super exciting. It's a great. Yeah. It was a great movie. At this point, I've seen it. Yeah. So by the time you're hearing this, I've seen it. So it was a great movie.
Now your integrity's on the line. Your official critical integrity.
Yeah. I need to, like, the movie theater is probably 500. No, not even 500. Probably 200 yards from my house.
Yeah.
So I think I can probably make my way over there.
Probably.
But also, like, I'm excited that we did this because it gave me an opportunity to reread the book.
Yeah.
And it's a book that, I was always like, oh, yeah, I like that book.
Definitely.
And
yeah.
I just never had the motivation or the excuse to reread it. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that this gave me that opportunity.
For sure. And I hope that for some of the listeners, it was the same way, right? Where they saw the movie coming out, that encouraged them to read the book for the first time. We're trying to kind of support that. If you did kind of make that jump, then we want to give you some content at least to like lean into since you just read it for the first time or whatever. So I hope that worked for some people and that you got something out of it, because we definitely enjoyed it.
Absolutely. If you want to contact us or come hang out and talk with us, you can find us on multiple different platforms. You can find those in the show notes below.
Joke's not getting old. Getting old.
It's not getting old. Anyways, no, so you can come find us anywhere. You can find us on Discord. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. I tweet about once a month. And
like we established in the last Board Ventures episode, Twitter's an angry place.
Twitter is an angry place.
And we're not typically angry.
Yeah, we're kind of glass is like medium full type people.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a lot of whiskey, so you should be happy with that.
Yeah. You're damn lucky.
I envy your glass.
But yeah, you can find any of those links in kind of the description of wherever you're listening to this podcast, or you can find those on our website, which is fantasyandstufflights.com.
Mm-hmm.
The show notes will be posted there, so you can also kind of get a synopsis of kind of what we've been talking about this episode. So we love talking with you all. Come hang out, and we're really looking forward to our next episode in a couple weeks.
Until then,
cheers, buddy.
Cheers.